The first bullet leaves the barrel at 2,750 feet per second. Emma Thorne. Caldwell watches it arc through the Afghan dawn, invisible to everyone but her. In her mind, she tracks every millimeter of its journey, the climb through thin mountain air, the drift as crosswind catches the copper jacket, the inevitable pull of gravity drawing it earthward toward a man who doesn't know he's already dead. 5 seconds of flight time, 5 seconds of perfect mathematics. The Taliban commander drops like a puppet with cut strings. Christ almighty, Commander Jack Morrison's voice cuts through the morning silence rough as gravel. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Emma doesn't take her eye from the loopholed scope. Her finger moves with practiced efficiency, cycling the bolt on her Remington 700, chambering the next round. Even now, even with the target down, she scans for secondaries, for threats, for the next problem that needs solving. My grandfather, sir. Her voice is steady, clinical. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Caldwell, Marine Scout Sniper, Korea, November 1952. Morrison lowers his binoculars. 52 years old, 28 years in the teams, and he's just watched something he didn't think was possible. The rangefinder on his vest reads 1,850 meters, over a mile, in wind conditions that would make most snipers pack up and go home. The woman beside him, 5'3" blonde hair, pulled back in a regulation bun, green eyes that never seemed to blink, just made it look like target practice. Korea, Morrison says. He knows that war. His own father served, there came home with frostbite scars and stories he never told. Your grandfather must have been something special. He was. Emma finally pulls back from the scope, her cheek bearing the slight impression of the stock. He taught me everything. Before he died, he made me promise I'd be better than good. He said good gets you killed in this job. Morrison studies her. Emma Thorne Caldwell, 27 years old, Navy JTAC specialist, Joint Terminal Attack Controller, the person who coordinates airstrikes calls and the cavalry handles communications. A support role, a safe role. Except nothing about Emma Caldwell fits that description. Her jacket came through channels 2 months ago, 3 years at Marine Scout Sniper School before she transferred to Navy. Graduated top of her class, qualified on every long-range weapon system in the arsenal. Then she requested JTAC training, and everyone figured she was washing out, moving to something easier. They were wrong. Pack it up, Morrison says. We've got a briefing in 30. Emma's already breaking down her rifle movements, smooth and automatic. The Remington 700 disappears into its case like a secret being put away. Morrison watches her work and thinks about the mission brief sitting on his desk back at FOB Wolverine. Operation Phantom Thunder, a target that's been haunting them for months, and a shot that everyone says can't be made. 72 hours earlier, the briefing room at Forward Operating Base Wolverine smelled like coffee sweat and the particular kind of tension that comes before bad news. Morrison stood at the front arms crossed, watching his team file in. 8 of his best SEAL Team 5, the ones who'd been with him through Fallujah, through Ramadi, through missions that would never make it into official reports. Chief Petty Officer Garrett McKenzie came in first, 40 years old, and built like a middleweight boxer, carrying the team's SR-25 sniper rifle like it was part of his body. Behind him, the assault team, Petty Officer First Class Hartley, the breacher. Stevens and Martinez, automatic weapons. Young Kowalski, the medic who'd saved 3 lives in a firefight last month. And Emma slipping in last, taking a seat in the back. Always watching, always calculating. Gentlemen, Morrison began, then caught himself. And Petty Officer Caldwell, we've got a target. The projector flickered to life. A face appeared on the screen. Middle Eastern man, late 40s, thick beard eyes that held the kind of certainty that made him dangerous. Khalid Durrani, Taliban commander, call sign the Ghost, responsible for 47 coalition deaths over the past 18 months. IEDs, ambushes, coordinated attacks on supply convoys. He's smart, he's careful, and he's been untouchable. Morrison clicked to the next slide. Satellite imagery of a compound in the Peak Valley stone buildings clustered on a ridgeline. Intel confirms he's here. Small security detail, minimal fortifications. He thinks he's safe because of the terrain. Another click. Topographical map. The problem is access. The valley's a kill box. Every approach is exposed. We can't get close without getting shredded. Mackenzie leaned forward. What's the range from feasible overwatch positions? 2,800 to 3,200 meters. Morrison let that sink in. Give or take. Someone whistled low. Mackenzie shook his head. Commander, that's theoretical distance. In perfect conditions, maybe. But in the Peck Valley wind shear from the mountains, heat mirage altitude, I know the problems, Chief. With respect, sir, I'm good. I'm real good. But at that range in those conditions, Mackenzie's jaw tightened. It's a coin flip, not a shot. Maybe I get lucky. Maybe I don't. Maybe Durrani moves at the wrong second, and we just pissed away our only chance. The room went quiet. Everyone knew Mackenzie was right. Longest confirmed sniper kill in history was 2,400, and change made by a British sniper in near-perfect conditions. They were talking about another half-mile on top of that. Commander, Emma's voice soft but clear. Every head turned. She stood up, stepped forward into the light. I can make that shot. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mackenzie laughed. Not cruel, but incredulous. Caldwell, no disrespect, but this isn't the qualification range. This is combat conditions. I know what it is, Chief. Emma's eyes didn't leave Morrison. My grandfather's confirmed record was 286 meters. Korea, winter of 1952. Enemy machine gun nest. First shot at that distance in Marine Corps history. She paused. I've exceeded that distance, multiple times, in conditions that would make the Peck Valley look easy. Morrison studied her. You're serious? Yes, sir. You understand what you're volunteering for. If you miss, Durrani disappears. Hundreds more soldiers die while we try to find him again. The weight of every single one of those deaths sits on your shoulders. I understand, Commander. Emma's voice didn't waver. I also understand that Chief Mackenzie just told you he can't guarantee the shot. I can. Mackenzie stood up, 6 inches taller than Emma, twice her weight. Commander, I need to speak with you. Privately. Whatever you need to say it here. Sir, she's never done this in combat. She's support personnel. We need someone who what? Emma cut in. Who has more experience missing? The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Morrison held up a hand. Caldwell, you've got sand, I'll give you that. But Chief Mackenzie's right about one thing. Combat is different than the range. So here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, 0600. I want you at the long-range qualification course. 2,400 meters combat conditions as close as we can simulate. You make that shot, we'll talk. Emma nodded once. Yes, sir. Dismissed. That night, Emma sat alone in her quarters, a plywood box that barely qualified as a room with a cot, a footlocker, and a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. On her cot lay a leather journal, worn soft with age and handling. The pages were yellowed, filled with cramped handwriting and technical diagrams. She opened it carefully, the spine cracking like old bones. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Caldwell. Personal log. Korea 1952. The entries were sparse, clinical. Range estimations. Wind calculations. Confirmed kills logged with the same emotional weight as grocery lists. But 3/4 through the tone changed. November 14th, 1952. Made the longest shot of my career today. 286 yards. Enemy spotter. North Korean, embedded with Chinese forces. Had him dead to rights in my scope. 19 years old, maybe. Scared. Shaking. I had the shot. Perfect conditions. No wind. Clear sight picture. My spotter was calling it in. Take him now. I didn't pull the trigger. Watched him through the scope for 2 full minutes. Saw him realize someone had him zeroed. Saw him make the choice to run instead of calling in our position. He lived. 40 men in my unit lived because he ran instead of radioing. They court-martialed me for it. Failure to engage. Said I compromised the mission. Maybe I did. But some decisions transcend orders. Some mercy is worth the cost. The hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's knowing when not to take it. Emma traced the words with her finger. She'd read this entry 100 times, memorized every word. Her grandfather never spoke about Korea, never told stories about the war. He just took her to the ranch every summer, set up targets at impossible distances, and taught her the mathematics of death. Shooting is just physics, Emma, he'd say, his voice gravelly,
from 60 years of cigarettes. Wind speed, air densities, Coriolis effect, spin drift. You account for every variable, you make the calculation, you commit to the solution. Everything else is just noise. She'd been 8 years old the first time she fired his Remington 700. The recoil had knocked her flat on her back. He'd laughed, helped her up, adjusted her stance, made her try again.
By age 12, she was out-hooting adults at local competitions. By 16, she was making shots that seasoned hunters called impossible. By 20, she knew she wanted to be a Marine. The Scout Sniper School nearly broke her. Not physically, she was stronger than she looked, could ruck 30 miles with a full pack and barely break a sweat. But the instructors didn't want her there, made it clear. A woman in Scout Sniper School was a distraction, a liability, a publicity stunt. They gave her every reason to quit. She graduated first in her class. Then she transferred to Navy, requested JTAC training, and everyone assumed she'd burned out. Couldn't handle the pressure, moving to something safer, easier, more appropriate. They were wrong. Emma closed the journal, placed it carefully back in her footlocker. Tomorrow morning, she'd prove exactly how wrong they were. She lay back on her cot and ran through the calculations in her head. 2,400 meters. Altitude, temperature, wind. The Remington 700 in her hands, custom-built to her grandfather's specifications. The scope that had logged over 10,000 rounds of practice. She closed her eyes and visualized the shot. The target downrange, the bullet's arc, the impact. In her mind, it was already done. The sun hadn't crested the Hindu Kush when Emma arrived at the range. The air was thin and cold frost still clinging to the rocks. Morrison was already there drinking coffee from a metal canteen. Mackenzie stood beside him, arms crossed, face unreadable. 4 other SEALs had come to watch. Word had spread. Caldwell. Morrison's breath formed clouds in the morning air. Your weapon. Emma unzipped the case. The Remington 700 gleamed in the pre-dawn light. .338. Lapua Magnum, custom barrel, hand-loaded ammunition. The scope was a Nightforce ATAC-R, 735X magnification parallax adjustment, good to 3,000 yards. Her grandfather's rifle, the one he'd used in Korea, rebuilt, upgraded, but still carrying the same serial number, stamped into the receiver 60 years ago. Targets at 2,400 meters. Morrison pointed downrange. Winds variable 8 to 12 miles per hour. Temperatures 43 degrees rising. Humidity's low. You've got 5 rounds. Make them count. Emma nodded. She pulled out a small notebook, started running calculations. The SEALs watched in silence as she worked checking the Kestrel weather meter clipped to her vest, noting wind direction, temperature, barometric pressure. Her pencil moved rapidly across the paper, numbers flowing like water. Mackenzie couldn't help himself. What are you calculating? Everything. Emma didn't look up. Temperature affects air density. Lower density means less bullet drop. Humidity's minimal, so that's not a major factor. Wind's the problem, it's swirling inconsistent. I need to wait for a pattern. She clicked her rangefinder. Range confirmed 2,400 meters, 7,197 feet. Altitude here is 7,400 feet above sea level, which means we don't need the math lesson, Mackenzie said. Chief? Morrison's voice carried warning. Let her work. Emma continued pencil scratching. Bullet drop at this distance with .338 Lapua Magnum, accounting for altitude and temperature. 42.3 MOA. Minute of angle 1 MOA equals approximately 1 inch at 100 yards, so at 2,400 yards, 1 MOA equals 24 inches. She looked up, meeting Mackenzie's eyes. That means if I'm off by even half an MOA, I miss by 12 inches. At this distance, there's no such thing as close enough. So how do you account for it? Practice. Repetition. Knowing your weapon system so well that it becomes an extension of your body. Emma's hands moved to the rifle, checking the action, the trigger pull, and accepting that some variables you can't control. You just have to commit to the solution and trust your training. She settled into position. Prone rifle bipod, extended body aligned behind the weapon. The morning sun broke over the mountains, painting the valley in gold and shadow. Through the scope, the target was a small steel plate, man-sized, barely visible. Winds settling, Emma murmured, shifting from 8 miles per hour to 6, 5. Pattern steadying. Morrison watched through binoculars. Mackenzie had his own scope tracking the same target. Emma's breathing slowed. In, out, each breath deliberate, controlled. Her heart rate dropped 70 beats per minute to 60 to 50. A meditation technique her grandfather had taught her, borrowed from Olympic shooters. Scope adjustment. She said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. 42.3 MOA elevation. Wind, 6 miles per hour at 2 o'clock means 4.8 MOA windage correction. Her fingers turned the turrets on the scope. Click, click, click. Each adjustment precise, measured. Ready, she whispered. The world narrowed to the crosshairs. The target was a dot at this distance, barely distinguishable from the rocks around it. Emma's finger found the trigger, a crisp 3.5-pound pull, exactly as her grandfather had set it. She exhaled halfway, held. Between heartbeats, she squeezed. The Remington 700 roared. Recoil punched into her shoulder. She rode it, stayed on target, watched through the scope. 3 seconds of flight time. The bullet drops a man-height, climbs again as the trajectory peaks, then falls toward Earth. Crosswind pushes it right. Spin drift pulls it further. Gravity works its mathematics. The steel plate rang like a bell. Dead center. Holy, one of the SEALs started. Again, Morrison said. Emma cycled the bolt. Chamber another round. Breathe. Calculate. This time, Mackenzie called out a wind shift. Gusting to 10 miles per hour. Variable. Emma adjusted. Waited. The wind was like a living thing, pushing and pulling. She watched the flags downrange, gauged the movement, found the pattern. Shot 2. Another hit. Wind's increasing, Mackenzie called. 12 to 15. Understood. Emma ran new numbers in her head. More windage correction needed. The target was dancing in the mirage now, heat from the rising sun distorting everything. Shot 3. High right by 6 inches. Adjust, Morrison said. Already on it. Emma's fingers moved on the scope. She'd felt that shot go wrong in the moment of trigger press, knew she'd pulled slightly. Minor adjustments. Breathe, reset, shot 4. Dead center. Morrison lowered his binoculars, looked at Mackenzie. Chief. Mackenzie's jaw worked like he was chewing rocks. Commander, one more. Make it hard. Morrison nodded. Caldwell, hold position. We're moving the target. 2 SEALs jogged downrange. They repositioned the steel plate, not just moving it laterally, but setting it at an angle partially concealed behind rocks. Harder to see, harder to hit. When they jogged back, Morrison checked his rangefinder. Range now 2,450 meters. Winds gusting to 18 miles per hour. Target's at a 45-degree angle. You've got 1 round left. Emma pulled back from the scope, blinked, cleared her vision. Picked up the Kestrel. New calculations. The angled target meant reduced surface area, less margin for error. The wind was worse now, inconsistent swirling in the valley. 90 seconds of calculation. Her hand moved across the notebook, numbers flowing. This is the shot, she said quietly. This is the one that matters. She settled back into position. Found the target through the scope, barely visible now, just a sliver of steel behind rock. The wind was chaos, gusting, dropping, gusting again. She needed a window. A moment of calm. 30 seconds passed. 60. Morrison shifted his weight, impatient. Emma waited, her grandfather's voice in her head. Patience is more important than skill. You can be the best shot in the world, but if you take it in the wrong conditions, you miss. Wait for your moment. It will come. 90 seconds. The wind dropped. 5 seconds of relative calm. Emma's finger found the trigger. Exhale, hold, between heartbeats, squeeze. The Remington spoke its truth. 4 seconds of flight. The bullet carved through morning air, climbing its arc, fighting wind and gravity and every force of physics that wanted to drag it down. The steel plate rang, not center mass, but a hit. Solid, confirmed, undeniable. Morrison lowered his binoculars slowly. Turned to Mackenzie. Chief. Mackenzie stared downrange for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Commander, she made every shot except one, in conditions that would have had me packing up my rifle. And that last one angled. Target variable wind, I wouldn't have taken it. So she's better than me. Mackenzie looked at Emma, something like respect in his eyes. She's better than anyone I've ever seen. Morrison walked over to where Emma was still prone, still looking through the scope. Caldwell, on your feet. She stood, slinging the rifle across her back. Tomorrow morning, 400, we brief the actual operation. Bring that rifle. Bring your grandfather's journal. Bring every piece of knowledge you have about long-range shooting. Morrison's face was stone. Because you're primary sniper for Operation Phantom Thunder. Mackenzie's your spotter, and if you miss, we all die. Emma snapped to attention. Understood, sir. Dismissed. As Emma walked away, rifle case in hand, Mackenzie approached Morrison, kept his voice low. Sir, you're sure about this? You just told me she's better than you. At shooting, yes. But combat? Chief, I watched her wait 90 seconds for the wind. Most snipers would have forced the shot, tried to make it happen. She waited for conditions to be right. Morrison turned to face him. That kind of patience under pressure. That's what I need. Not the cowboy who thinks he can beat physics through sheer will. Mackenzie nodded slowly. What aren't you telling me? Morrison pulled out a manila folder from inside his jacket. Opened it. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, clearly taken from long distance. A man, Caucasian, late 40s, wearing tactical gear. This is classified. TS SCI. But you need to know what we're really walking into. Mackenzie studied the photo. Who is he? Colonel Marcus Vance. Former Delta Force. One of the best snipers America ever produced. Record kill 30,089 meters. Made it in Iraq 2007. I remember hearing about that. So what's the problem? Morrison's voice went flat. Vance went dark in 2009. Declared AWOL, then declared dead when we couldn't find him. Except he's not dead. He's alive, working as a mercenary advisor to the Taliban. And he's the one protecting Khalid Durrani. The pieces clicked together in Mackenzie's head. White Death. The sniper who's killed 15 of ours. That's Vance. Confirmed. 3 days ago, CIA intercepted communications. Vance is in the Peck Valley training Taliban fighters in counter-sniper operations, teaching them everything we taught him. So this whole operation, Durrani is secondary. Durrani is the bait. Vance is the real target. Morrison's eyes were hard as flint. CIA wants him eliminated, quietly. No trial, no publicity, no questions about how an American hero became a traitor. Just a bullet from long distance and a body that never makes it home. And you're sending Caldwell? Vance was trained by the same doctrine as her grandfather. He studied Robert Caldwell's methods, tried to surpass them. When Vance made that 30,089 meter shot, you know what he said? Morrison paused. He said it was dedicated to the memory of Gunnery Sergeant Caldwell. Said he was trying to honor the legacy. Jesus. Emma doesn't know yet. About Vance being American, about his connection to her grandfather's legacy. But she needs to be the one who takes this shot. Morrison closed the folder. Because if anyone can beat Vance at his own game, it's the woman who inherited Robert Caldwell's gift. When do you tell her? Tonight. Private briefing. Just her. Morrison turned back toward the fob. Get some rest, Chief. Tomorrow we start mission prep, and this one's going to get ugly before it's done. That evening, Emma sat in Morrison's office. The space was barely larger than her quarters plywood walls, a metal desk, a chair that had seen better days. Morrison sat across from her, the classified folder between them. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, he began. Emma nodded. Morrison slid the folder across. Open it. She did. Saw the photograph. Studied the man's face, hard angles, cold eyes, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. Colonel Marcus Vance, Morrison said. Ring any bells? Or Delta Force. Record holder for longest confirmed kill. 30,089 meters Iraq, 2007. Emma looked up. Why are you showing me this? Because he's our real target, not Durrani. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Vance is alive. He was declared. Dead, I know. Except he's very much alive, working for the other side. Advising Taliban forces. Teaching them counter-sniper tactics. He's the one they call White Death. The implications hit Emma like a physical blow. An American. We're hunting an American. An American traitor who's killed 15 coalition soldiers. Morrison leaned forward. Vance studied your grandfather's work. When he was at Fort Bragg, he spent months analyzing every shot Robert Caldwell ever made. Read every report, studied every operation. He was obsessed with surpassing the Caldwell legacy. Emma's mind raced. The 30,089 meter shot. He dedicated it to your grandfather. Said he was honoring the tradition. Morrison's voice went hard. Then he took everything we taught him and sold it to the enemy. So no, Emma, this isn't about honor anymore. This is about stopping a traitor before he kills more Americans. Why me? Because Vance thinks he's the heir to your grandfather's legacy. He thinks he surpassed it. But you, Morrison pointed at her, You're the real heir. Blood, training, dedication. And if anyone's going to beat Vance at his own game, it needs to be a Caldwell. Emma closed the folder slowly. What's the ROE? Rules of engagement. Lethal force authorized. No warning. No attempt at capture. The mission is elimination, pure and simple. Morrison paused. I need to know if you can do this. Killing Taliban fighters is one thing. Killing an American, even a traitor, that's different. That's a line that once you cross, you don't come back from. Emma thought of her grandfather's journal. The entry about Mercy. About the shot he didn't take. Sir, my grandfather spared an enemy because he saw something worth saving. A scared kid who made a choice to run instead of fight. She met Morrison's eyes. Marcus Vance isn't that kid. He's a trained killer who chose to betray his country, who's teaching the enemy how to kill more Americans. There's nothing worth saving there. So you can make this shot, I can make any shot you need me to make. Emma stood. When do we leave? 0400 tomorrow. Full mission brief at 0500. Insertion at 23:15. Morrison stood as well. Get some rest. It's a long flight to the Peach Valley. Emma turned to leave, then paused. Commander, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you tell me this during the open briefing? Morrison was quiet for a moment, because the moment the team knows we're hunting an American, everything changes. They start second-guessing, start wondering if maybe there's another way. Politics and ethics get in the way of what needs to be done. He looked at her steadily. But you needed to know. Because when you're looking through that scope at 3,200 meters, when Vance is in your crosshairs, I need you to understand exactly who you're killing and why. I understand, sir. Good. Dismissed. Emma spent the night preparing her gear with the methodical precision of ritual. Each piece of equipment was checked, double-checked, test-fired, or test-used. The Remington 700 was field-stripped, cleaned, reassembled. Every round of ammunition was inspected, weighed, measured. Her Kestrel weather meter was calibrated. Her rangefinder was tested against known distances. At midnight, she allowed herself one moment of doubt. Sitting on her cot, grandfather's journal in her lap, she wondered what he would think. Would he approve? Would he see this as justice or just another version of the thing that got him court-martialed? She found the entry again. November 14th, 1952. Read it one more time. The hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's knowing when not to take it. But her grandfather had been talking about mercy, about seeing humanity in the enemy, about choosing not to kill when killing would have been easier. Vance had made his choices. Trained Americans, then sold them out. Killed 15 soldiers who trusted their training, their equipment, their intelligence would keep them safe. He'd chosen profit over honor, greed over loyalty. Emma closed the journal. Some mercy is worth the cost, her grandfather had written, but some choices forfeit the right to mercy. She would make the shot, not for revenge, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. Because letting Vance continue would cost more American lives. Because her grandfather had taught her not just how to shoot, but when to shoot. And why. At 0400 hours, she was at the briefing room. Ready. Morrison stood at the front mission map projected on the wall behind him. The team filed in: Mackenzie, Hartley, Stevens, Martinez, Kowalski, 2 other SEALs Emma knew by sight, but not name. All combat veterans. All men who'd seen the worst that war could offer, and her. Gentlemen, Petty Officer Caldwell, this is Operation Phantom Thunder. Wheels up in 6 hours. Questions hold until the end. He clicked through satellite imagery. Target area is here, Peck Valley, Kunar Province. Primary objective, Khalid Durrani, Taliban commander. Secondary objective. He paused, weighing his words. Elimination of high-value target code named White Death. Mackenzie's eyes flickered to Emma. She kept her face neutral. White Death is an enemy sniper. 15 confirmed American kills. Skilled professional, extremely dangerous. Intel confirms he's providing personal security for Durrani. That means we're not just dealing with Taliban fighters. We're dealing with someone who knows exactly how we operate. Morrison clicked to topographical maps. Insertion here, 6 clicks from target. Night movement over rough terrain, 2,400 feet, elevation gain. We establish overwatch position on this ridge at 0430. Observation begins at dawn. ROE is weapons-free on all hostile targets. Extraction via Black Hawk at designated LZ time to be determined based on mission completion. He looked directly at Emma. Petty Officer Caldwell is primary sniper. Chief Mackenzie is spotter. Engagement distance is estimated between 28 and 3,200 meters. Questions? Stevens raised a hand. Sir, those are extreme distances. What's our backup if the shot can't be made? There is no backup. We make this shot, or the operation is scrubbed, and we try again in 6 months, assuming Durrani doesn't disappear completely. Morrison's voice went hard. 15 American soldiers have died because of White Death. I'm not interested in trying again. We do this right. We do it now. We do it once. No one else asked questions. They understood. This wasn't a discussion. This was a briefing, and the decisions were already made. Gear up. We leave at 1000. Dismissed. The team dispersed. Emma stayed behind, checking her notes, running final calculations. Mackenzie approached, kept his voice low. You good? I'm good. 28 to 3,200 meters. That's past your longest confirmed. Emma looked up at him. Chief, with all due respect, every record starts with someone taking a shot they've never made before. Mackenzie almost smiled. Fair enough. Just remember, when we're out there, I'm your eyes and ears. You focus on the shot. I'll handle everything else. Copy that. He started to leave, then turned back. Caldwell, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're the one taking this shot. Why? Because I watched you wait 90 seconds for the wind. Most snipers can't do that. They get impatient, force it miss. But you? He shook his head. You've got ice water in your veins. That's what we need out there. After he left, Emma sat alone in the empty briefing room. The map of Peck Valley glowed on the wall, topographical lines, showing the mountains, the valley, the impossible distance between her and the target. She thought about her grandfather, about Korea in 1952, a young Marine with a rifle and a choice, about Vance, obsessed with surpassing a legacy he didn't truly understand, about herself, 27 years old, carrying the weight of 15 dead Americans and one shot that could end it all. The mathematics were clear. Range, wind temperature, humidity, Coriolis effect, spin drift. Variables that could be measured, calculated, accounted for. But there was one variable that couldn't be quantified: the moment when metal met flesh, when a bullet ended a life, when a decision became irrevocable. Her grandfather had chosen mercy. Vance had chosen betrayal. Emma Thorne Caldwell would choose justice. She closed her notebook, shouldered her rifle case, and walked out into the Afghan morning. The sun was rising over the Hindu Kush, painting the mountains in shades of gold and blood. Somewhere in the Peck Valley, Marcus Vance was watching the same sunrise, planning his next kill, training the next generation of fighters who'd kill more Americans. In less than 24 hours, one way or another, that would end. Emma had never been more certain of anything in her life. The shot was already made. She just had to deliver it. The Black Hawk's rotors beat the air like a giant's heartbeat, steady and relentless. Emma sat in the jump seat rifle case between her knees, watching the Hindu Kush slide past below. The mountains looked like the spine of some ancient creature, jagged and unforgiving valleys carved deep where rivers had spent millennia cutting stone. 23:15 hours? Full dark. The cabin was lit only by red lights that preserved night vision, casting everyone in shades of crimson. Morrison sat across from her, eyes closed, but she knew he wasn't sleeping. Next to him, Mackenzie checked and rechecked his gear with the obsessive precision of a man who'd stayed alive through attention to detail. The other SEALs were quiet, each man locked in his own pre-mission ritual. Partly-mouthed, silent prayers. Stevens cleaned his weapon for the third time. Martinez stared at a photograph Emma couldn't see. Kowalski, the medic, inventoried his aid bag one more time, fingers moving through bandages and tourniquets, like a pianist warming up. 5 minutes, the crew chief called out. Morrison's eyes opened. He looked at each member of his team, making eye contact, getting the nod. When he got to Emma, he held her gaze for a moment longer than the others. She nodded once. Ready. The Black Hawk banked hard, dropping altitude. Emma's stomach rose as they descended the valley walls, rushing up to meet them. The pilots were flying NOE nap of the Earth, staying low to avoid radar detection. At this altitude, one wrong move, and they'd paint the mountainside with wreckage. But the pilots were good. The best. The helicopter flared, settling onto a rocky plateau with barely a bump. Before the skids fully touched down, Morrison was moving hand signals crisp in the red light. Emma followed Mackenzie out, boots hitting Afghan soil, weapon up, scanning for threats. The Black Hawk, lifted immediately, rotors washing them with grit and exhaust. Then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness, and they were alone in enemy territory. Silence rushed in like a physical presence. No engine noise, no radio chatter, just wind and the sound of 8 operators breathing, adjusting their kit, preparing to move. Morrison's hand came up. More signals. Diamond formation, 50-meter intervals. Noise discipline, absolute. They moved out. The terrain was brutal. Loose scree that shifted underfoot, threatening to send them sliding. Rocky outcroppings that had to be climbed. The elevation gain was punishing 2,400 feet over 6 kilometers, carrying full combat loads. Emma's pack weighed 70 pounds, the rifle case, another 15. Her legs burned after the first kilometer. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, just kept moving one foot in front of the other, breathing steady despite the thin air. Mackenzie moved like a ghost ahead of her, somehow finding the quiet path through the rocks. Emma followed his footsteps, exactly trusting his experience. Behind her, Hartley maintained interval weapon at low ready, covering their 6. 2 hours of climbing, no talking, hand signals only. Once Morrison raised a fist, and everyone froze. Emma's heart hammered as she scanned the darkness through her night vision goggles. The world was rendered in shades of green, flat, and surreal. After 30 seconds, Morrison moved again. False alarm. At 0430, they reached the overwatch position. The ridge was perfect, a rocky outcropping that gave them clear sight lines down into the valley while providing cover and concealment. Morrison positioned the team assault element further back, ready to provide security. Emma and Mackenzie moved to the lip of the ridge, began setting up their hide site. Mackenzie worked fast, stringing camouflage netting, arranging rocks to create a low berm. Emma unpacked the Remington 700, assembled it with practiced efficiency. Every movement was deliberate quiet. The Barrett M82A1 came out next, the backup weapon, a 50 caliber monster that could punch through engine blocks. Radio check, Morrison whispered into his mic. One by one, the team confirmed comms. Emma keyed her mic twice. Good copy. All stations Reaper 6. We're set. Maintain noise discipline. Caldwell Mackenzie begin observation at first light. Everyone else rest rotation. 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Emma settled into position behind the Remington idoscope. Couldn't see anything yet, too dark even with night vision. But she could feel the valley below, could sense the distance. She pulled out her Kestrel weather meter, took readings. Temperature 43 degrees and dropping. Wind calm for now, but that would change with sunrise. Humidity low, barometric pressure. Noting the altitude, she opened her small notebook, began logging data. Mackenzie watched, sipping water from his Camelback. How you holding up? He whispered. Good. That climb was a bitch. Yes, it was. He almost smiled. You don't say much, do you? Not much to say. Emma checked her watch. 0500. An hour until first light. Chief, get some rest. I'll maintain watch. You sure? I'm not sleeping until this is done. Mackenzie studied her face in the darkness, nodded. Wake me at first light, and Caldwell, don't do anything heroic. We take this slow. We take it smart. Copy that. He moved back 10 feet, settled against a rock, and was asleep within minutes. Emma envied that ability. Her own mind was racing, running calculations, playing out scenarios. What if the wind was too variable? What if Vance didn't show? What if she missed? She pushed the thoughts away, focused on breathing, on the present moment, on the rifle in her hands, in the valley below. Her grandfather's voice came to her memory, as clear as if he was sitting beside her. Fear is just another variable, Emma. You account for it, adjust for it, move on. The shot doesn't care if you're scared. Physics doesn't care. So breathe, calculate, commit. The eastern sky began to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but the deep black fading to charcoal. Emma watched the valley emerge from darkness like a photograph developing. Stone buildings became visible first, then the compound walls, then individual features. Chief, she whispered. First light. Mackenzie was awake instantly, moving to position beside her with the spotting scope. Together they glassed the target area. The compound was exactly as the intel photos showed. 2-story stone building, flat roof, surrounded by a wall, maybe 8 feet high. 4 guards visible on the walls, More movement inside the courtyard. 2 technical trucks. Toyota pickups with machine guns mounted in the beds. Range, Mackenzie said quietly. Emma used the laser rangefinder careful to keep the beam from hitting anything reflective. 2,847 meters, 8,541 feet. Wind? She checked the Kestrel. 6 miles per hour variable. Direction? Shifting between 2 and 3 o'clock. Temperature? 51 degrees, rising fast. Mackenzie made notes in his own book. Okay, we're looking at significant heat mirage in about 2 hours. Temperature differential between us and the valley floor is going to create distortion. Emma nodded. She'd accounted for that. The morning window would be best, after the light was good enough to see clearly, before the heat built up enough to shimmer the air. Movement, Mackenzie said. 2nd floor balcony. Emma swung the Remington onto target. Through the Night Force scope, at high magnification, a man appeared. Middle-aged beard, traditional Afghan clothing, drinking from a small cup. Tea, probably. That's him, she breathed. That's Durrani. Confirm. Target identified. Mackenzie keyed his radio. Reaper 6 Shadow 2. Primary target spotted. 2nd floor balcony. Morrison's voice came back calm and controlled. Copy. Stand by. Looking for White Death. Emma shifted her scan, checking the surrounding buildings, the ridgelines. Somewhere out there, Marcus Vance was watching. Waiting. She could feel it an itch between her shoulder blades, the sensation of being in someone else's crosshairs. Chief, she said quietly, he knows we're here. How can you know that? Because this is what I do. Set up the primary target as bait. Wait for the sniper to reveal position. Then take them out. Emma's eyes never stopped moving, scanning, searching. Vance studied my grandfather's tactics. This was one of them. Mackenzie went very still. Are you saying we're in his trap? I'm saying he's good enough to predict where we'd set up Overwatch. And he's patient enough to wait for us to commit. Reaper 6 Shadow 2, Mackenzie said into his radio. Caldwell advises possible counter-sniper trap. Request permission to relocate. Static. Then Morrison. Negative. Too exposed to move now. We stay put. Find Vance before he finds us. Emma increased her scanning pattern. Not just the obvious positions, the facing ridgelines, the high ground. Vance would know those were obvious. He'd set up somewhere unexpected, somewhere with clear sight lines, but from an angle no one would anticipate. The sun crested the mountains. Golden light flooded the valley, harsh and beautiful. Shadows became knife-edged. Every rock stood out in sharp relief, and then she saw it. Contact. Her voice was barely a whisper. Adjacent ridge, 11 o'clock, 3,100 meters. Mackenzie swung his spotting scope. I don't see. Watch for sun glint. He's got a scope, and the angle is there. A flash. Brief, just a fraction of a second. Sunlight catching glass. I see him, Mackenzie breathed. Jesus, that's a hell of a position. How did you? It's what my grandfather would have chosen. Emma was already running calculations. New range, different angle. Wind would be affected by the cross-valley currents. Range to secondary target, 3,112 meters, 9,336 feet. Emma's mind raced through the ballistics. Longer range meant more bullet drop, more wind drift, more time for variables to affect the shot. The .338 Lapua Magnum could reach that far, but accuracy would be degraded. Margin for error measured in inches. I have the shot, she said. Difficult, but achievable. Shadow 2 to Reaper 6. Secondary target acquired. Adjacent ridge range 3112. Caldwell has the shot. Can she take it? Mackenzie looked at Emma. She looked back, utterly calm. Affirmative. She's got it. Stand by. I'm going to... The transmission cut off. Not static, just silence. Then the sound reached them. A flat crack echoing across the valley, unmistakable. High-powered rifle. Contact, someone yelled. Morrison's voice. Sniper, everyone down! Emma's heart rate spiked. She shifted her aim, trying to locate the shooter. But Vance had already moved. She knew it. That shot was fired from a position he wouldn't use twice. Shadow 2 Reaper 6, report. 1 round fired. Missed the commander by maybe 18 inches. Vance is mobile. We've lost visual. Emma scanned frantically. Where would he go? Where would she go? The answer came immediately closer. Close enough that the next shot wouldn't miss. Chief, he's relocating to improve his angle. Probably cutting the range by 500, maybe 800 meters. Look for positions between 23 and 2,500 meters out. Mackenzie swept the valley with his scope. There. 10 o'clock lower ridge. I've got movement. Emma shifted. Caught a glimpse of something fabric maybe, or the stock of a rifle. Then nothing. I don't have a clear shot. He's playing smart, moving position to position, never exposing himself. Mackenzie keyed the radio. Reaper 6 Shadow 2. Vance is closing range. Estimate 2,400 meters current position. We're weapons tight, no clear shot. Copy. We're engaging targets in the compound. Taking fire from multiple positions. Taliban forces moving in from 3 approaches. The situation was deteriorating fast. Emma could hear gunfire now, the sharp bark of M4s, the deeper thud of AK-47s. The Taliban fighters had been waiting positioned to ambush them. Vance had set this up perfectly. Chief, check your right cargo pocket. Mackenzie frowned. What? Just check it. He reached down, felt the pocket. His face went pale. Pulled out a small device. Chinese-made satellite phone. Definitely not U.S. issue. What the hell? You're the mole, Emma said flatly. Or someone planted that on you. Either way, that's how Vance knew we were coming. Mackenzie stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. Commander, we've got a problem. Emma kept her voice level, clinical. Chief, Mackenzie has a sat phone that's not part of our standard kit. Someone's been feeding Vance information. Morrison's voice came back hard. Mackenzie, you want to explain that? Sir, I don't know how that got there. I didn't put it there. I would never. Later. Right now, we've got bigger problems. Vance is still active, and we're taking fire from 3 sides. Caldwell, can you engage? Emma scanned desperately. Vance was out there somewhere repositioning, preparing his next shot. Every second he was active, her team was in danger. She needed to find him, pin him down in this. Negative, clear shot. He's too well concealed. Then make him reveal himself. Morrison's voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Shadow 2 Reaper 6. We're compromised, mission is burned. Exfil birds are 40 minutes out. Hold position, stay alive. We'll sort this out back at base. 40 minutes. Eternity in combat. Emma's mind raced through options. They were pinned down under fire with a hostile sniper who knew exactly where they were. The tactical situation was deteriorating by the second. Chief, she said quietly, that phone, when was it planted? Mackenzie looked sick. I don't know. Could have been any time. During gear up, during the flight, even during the climb. I never checked that pocket. It's usually empty. Check the call log, now. His fingers shook slightly as he activated the phone. Scrolled through. There's only one number, and it's been calling out. Last transmission was... He looked at his watch, did the math. 20 minutes before we inserted. Grid coordinates were sent. Emma's blood went cold. Someone at FOB Wolverine had betrayed them. Someone knew the operation, knew the insertion point, knew everything, and they'd passed it all to Vance. Commander, whoever planted this phone is back at base. Someone with access to our mission planning. Someone who knew our LZ coordinates. Silence on the radio. When Morrison spoke again, his voice was controlled fury. Copy that. We'll deal with it. Right now, focus on Vance. I need that sniper down. Emma went back to scanning. The problem was simple. Vance had every advantage. He knew where they were. He had prepared positions. He was mobile, while they were static. The only way to beat him was to think like him. What would her grandfather do? The answer came, change the game. Stop reacting. Start forcing moves. Chief, I need you to trust me. What are you thinking? Durrani. He's still on that balcony, still drinking his tea. Vance is protecting him, which means Vance is positioned to cover the compound. So we take the shot at Durrani. Force Vance to reveal himself when he tries to return fire. Mackenzie's eyes widened. That's bait. You're making yourself bait. I'm making us both bait. But it's the only way to draw him out. Emma's hands were steady on the rifle. We take Durrani, Vance loses his primary mission objective. He'll have to engage us directly, or risk mission failure. Either way, he reveals position. And if he shoots you while you're lining up on Durrani, then you shoot him. Emma looked at Mackenzie directly. Chief, I know you didn't plant that phone. I know you're not a traitor, so I need you to be my eyes while I'm on target. Can you do that? Something in Mackenzie's face hardened. The doubt fled, replaced by determination. Yeah, I can do that. Reaper 6 Shadow 2. We're engaging primary target to draw out secondary. Stand by. Negative, Shadow 2. Mission is scrubbed. We're extracting. Sir. If we don't take Vance now, he disappears. 40 more Americans die while we try to find him again. This is the shot. Emma's voice didn't waver. I can make this work. Long pause. Emma could almost hear Morrison weighing the options. Finally, you've got one shot. Make it count. All stations cover fire on my mark. Give the sniper team some breathing room. Emma settled behind the Remington, found Durrani in the scope. He was still there, oblivious, watching the firefight in the valley below like it was entertainment. Range 2, 847 meters. Wind now 8 miles per hour, shifting to 10. Temperature 73 degrees and climbing. Heat mirage beginning to distort the image. She ran the calculations in her head. Bullet drop at this range, accounting for altitude and temperature, 43.7 MOA, and drift 6.2 MOA right. Coriolis effect, 1.1 MOA left. Spin drift, 0.6 MOA right. Total adjustment, 43.7. Up 6.7, right. Her fingers turned the scope turrets. Click, click, click. Each adjustment precise. Winds shifting, Mackenzie said. Now 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. Emma recalculated. More windage needed. The gusts were the problem, inconsistent, unpredictable. She watched the valley looking for patterns. The wind flagged, she'd noted the movement of dust, the way vegetation bent. Patterns cycling every 7 to 8 minutes, she said. There's a 30-second window when it drops to steady 10. Next window in, 4 minutes. Copy. I'll call it when we're in the window. Emma waited, breathing steady, heart rate controlled. In her peripheral vision, she could see Mackenzie scanning with the spotting scope, watching for Vance, ready to call out if the enemy sniper revealed himself. The firefight below intensified. Morrison's team was engaging Taliban fighters, trying to create enough chaos to cover Emma's shot. Tracer rounds arced across the valley. The heavy thump of the M249 saw hammered the air. 3 minutes, Mackenzie said. Emma found her zone, the place her grandfather had taught her, where everything else fell away and only the shot remained. Her breathing slowed, her vision sharpened. The rifle became an extension of her body, responding to the tiniest muscle twitch. 2 minutes, winds starting to drop. Through the scope, Durrani set down his teacup, stood up, started to turn toward the door. He's moving, Emma said. 1 minute, stay on him. Durrani paused, pulled out a cell phone, made a call, gestured with his free hand. He was right there, perfectly positioned. But if he went inside, they'd lose the shot entirely. 30 seconds, winds at 12 dropping to 10, 9, 8. It's settling. Emma's finger found the trigger. 3.5 pounds of pressure, smooth, steady. Windows open, send it. Durrani was talking on the phone, animated, unaware. Emma exhaled halfway, held. Her heart beat once, twice. Between the beats, in the eternal moment of stillness, she squeezed. The Remington roared. Recoil hammered her shoulder. She rode it, stayed on target, through the scope. 3 seconds of flight time. The bullet climbing its arc, pushed by wind, pulled by gravity, spinning through air that grew thinner as it climbed. Through the scope, she saw Durrani's head snap back. He dropped like a puppet, with cut strings, the phone clattering across the balcony. Hit, Mackenzie breathed. Good hit. Primary target down. But Emma was already moving, shifting her aim, scanning for Vance. Where is he? I don't wait. Contact 1130 Lower Ridge. He's repositioning. Emma swung the rifle. Caught movement. Saw Vance clearly. For the first time, prone position, Russian-made rifle ghillie suit. He was setting up for a return shot. The distance was too far for the Remington. Not impossible, but degraded accuracy. She needed the Barrett. Switching weapons. Her hands moved fast, pushing the Remington aside, pulling the Barrett M82A1 forward. The .50 caliber beast was meant for material targets, vehicles, light structures, but it could reach out to 4,000 meters if needed. She threw the bipod down, settled in behind the massive rifle. Found Vance in the scope. Range, 30,047 meters. He's setting up on you. You've got maybe 10 seconds before he fires. Emma ran calculations at lightning speed. The Barrett's ballistics were different. Heavier bullet, different trajectory. But she knew this weapon had fired it hundreds of times. Vance was almost set. She could see him adjusting his scope, finding his target. Finding her. No time for perfect. Only time for good enough. Emma settled her breathing, aimed, trusted her instinct more than her calculation, squeezed. The Barrett spoke with a voice like God's own thunder. The recoil was massive, pushing her back even braced against the bipod. The muzzle brake directed blasts sideways in a concussive wave that kicked up dust all around her position. Through the scope, she saw Vance's rifle disintegrate. The scope exploded in a shower of glass and metal. He rolled sideways, scrambling for cover. "Hit his weapon," Mackenzie yelled. "He's blind." Emma was already cycling the bolt, chambering another round, but Vance was moving fast, disappearing behind rocks. She fired again. The .50 caliber round blew chunks out of the boulder he'd been using for cover, but he was already gone. "He's displaced. I've lost him. All stations Reaper 6. Primary target eliminated. Secondary target engaged. Status unknown. We're pulling back to LZ. Move now, move fast." The team began breaking contact, firing and maneuvering by pairs, creating space between themselves and the Taliban fighters. Emma and Mackenzie packed their weapons with controlled urgency, breaking down the hide site, preparing to move. Shadow 2. This is Reaper 6. Status on the sat phone. Mackenzie looked at the device still lying on the rocks. "Still here, Commander. Bring it. We're going to find out who gave us up." They moved out, falling back along their approach route. The Taliban fighters were disorganized, leaderless without Durrani. But they were still numerous, still dangerous. Bullets snapped past, ricocheting off rocks. Hartley returned fire with controlled bursts, covering the team's movement. Emma ran the rifle case on her back weapon in her hands, scanning for threats. Her legs burned, lungs heaving in the thin air. Behind them, the firefight continued, gradually fading as distance increased. They reached the LZ 35 minutes later, lungs burning everyone's ammunition low. The Blackhawks came in fast, barely touching down before the team piled in. Emma was the last up the ramp, Mackenzie pulling her aboard as the helicopter lifted. Through the open door, she could see the valley falling away. Smoke rose from the compound. Durrani was dead. Vance was wounded, his weapon destroyed. His mission failed, but he was alive. And alive meant dangerous. Morrison moved through the helicopter, checking each team member. When he got to Mackenzie, he held out his hand. The phone. Mackenzie handed it over. Morrison examined it, his face carved from stone. "When we get back to base, no one talks about this. Not to anyone. Not until we figure out who planted this." He looked at Emma. "You understand? Someone at FOB Wolverine betrayed us. Someone with access to classified operations. And until we know who we trust, no one." Emma nodded. Her mind was already working through the implications. The mission planning had been restricted. Only Morrison, Mackenzie, and a handful of officers back at base would have known the details. The insertion coordinates the timing, the specific target. Someone in that small circle was a traitor. The helicopter banked hard, heading for friendly airspace. Emma closed her eyes, let the adrenaline slowly drain from her system. She'd made the shot. Durrani was dead. Vance was neutralized, at least temporarily. But something nagged at her. Something about the way Vance had positioned himself, the way he'd waited. This wasn't just counter-sniper tactics. This was personal. He'd studied her grandfather's methods, dedicated his record shot to Robert Caldwell's memory. And now she'd destroyed his rifle, ruined his mission, cost him his target. Men like Vance didn't forget things like that. The war between them had just begun. The Black Hawk touched down at FOB Wolverine at 0847 hours. Emma's boots hit the tarmac, her legs unsteady from adrenaline crash and exhaustion. The sun was already climbing toward brutal midday heat, turning the base into an oven. Around her, the team dispersed toward debriefing, each man carrying the weight of a mission that had reshaped everything they thought they knew about limits. Morrison's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Caldwell, my office. 5 minutes." She nodded, watched him walk away. Mackenzie stood nearby, the confiscated sat phone now in an evidence bag under Morrison's arm. The chief's face was drawn pale beneath his tan. Being accused of betrayal, even implicitly, had carved something out of him. "Chief," Emma said quietly. He looked at her. "I didn't plant that phone. I need you to know that." "I know. How can you be sure? Because if you were working with Vance, you would have let me take that shot at him. Let me expose myself. Let him kill me." "You didn't. You covered me." Emma adjusted the rifle case on her shoulder. "Whoever planted it wants us fighting each other, wants us doubting. We don't give them that." Something like relief crossed Mackenzie's face. "Thanks. Don't thank me yet. We still have to find out who did plant it." She left him there, walked toward the plywood building that housed Morrison's office. Inside, the air was marginally cooler, circulated by a fan that sounded like it was dying. Morrison sat behind his desk, not with the sat phone, but with something else. A clear evidence bag containing another phone screen cracked, but still glowing. Close the door. Emma did. Took the offered chair. Quick Reaction Force recovered Vance's body 20 minutes ago. Morrison slid the evidence bag across. He had this on him. Message typed, but not sent. Addressed to you. Emma picked up the bag, read the screen. The text was small, cramped, but legible. Emma Thorne Caldwell. If you're reading this, you made a shot I didn't think was possible. 247 meters. You just broke my record by 158 meters. I studied your grandfather's work for 20 years. Robert Caldwell shaped everything I became as a sniper. When I made my 389-meter shot in Iraq, I dedicated it to his memory. I thought I was honoring his legacy. I was wrong. Korea, 1952. Your grandfather spared a North Korean spotter, age 19. That spotter had a son who became a legendary instructor in their military. That instructor trained foreign advisors in the 1990s during joint exercises, including me. Your grandfather's mercy created a lineage of snipers. I'm the corruption of that line. I took everything he taught through that lineage, through studying his methods, and sold it for money, for pride, for proving I could surpass the legend. But I never understood what made him legendary. It wasn't the distance. It was the judgment. The mole at FOB Wolverine isn't Mackenzie. He's just a patsy. The real traitor is Colonel Augustus Stanton. He's been selling intel for 3 years. Payment, $8.7 million offshore accounts. Gambling debts and blackmail drove him to it. Stanton will kill you all to protect himself. He planted that phone on Mackenzie during final gear check. He warned me you were coming. He's been running this operation from the start. You're the true heir to Robert Caldwell's legacy. Don't let Stanton corrupt it the way I did. Your 247-meter shot just proved who the real master is. Your grandfather would be proud. Marcus Vance. Emma read it twice. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing through implications, connections, threats. Is it credible? She asked. CID is checking Stanton's financials now, but yeah. Everything Vance said matches patterns we've been seeing. Morrison's jaw tightened. 11 operations compromised in 6 months, every single one after Stanton arrived. The timing is perfect. If Stanton knows we're looking at him, he'll run or eliminate witnesses. Morrison leaned forward, which is why we're moving fast. CID is preparing arrest warrants as we speak, but Caldwell Stanton doesn't know about this message yet. Vance never sent it. We recovered it from his body. That gives us an advantage. What do you need me to do? I need you to act normal. Go to the debriefing at 1400 hours. Don't let Stanton know we're on to him. Let him think we're still chasing ghosts. Morrison's eyes were hard. CID will move tonight, 0200 hours. Quietly. By morning this will be over. Emma nodded, but her instincts were screaming. Men like Stanton didn't survive 4 decades in special operations by being oblivious. If he sensed even the slightest shift in how people looked at him, how they acted around him, he'd know. Sir, what if he runs before then? All exits are monitored. He's not leaving this base without us knowing, unless he has help we don't know about. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then we deal with that when it happens. For now, get some rest. You look like hell. With respect, sir, so do you. He almost smiled. Dismissed. Her quarters felt suffocating. Emma stripped off her gear, each piece placed exactly where it belonged. The Remington 700 went into its case after a thorough cleaning. The rifle was perfect. It always was. She had 4 hours before debriefing. Should sleep. Couldn't. Instead, she pulled out her grandfather's journal. Found the entry from December 1952. 2 weeks after the shot he didn't take. They found the spotter I let go. Dead. Executed by his own officers for desertion. He'd been 19 years old. Had a wife and infant son back in Pyongyang, according to the intel boys. I told myself mercy was worth the cost. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But I'll never know if sparing him saved lives or just prolonged his suffering. All I know is I made a choice, and a 19-year-old kid died anyway, just slower and more painfully than if I'd pulled the trigger. War doesn't have clean answers, just choices and consequences. Emma closed the journal. Her grandfather's mercy had created a lineage. That spotter's son became an instructor, trained Marcus Vance, and Vance had killed 15 Americans. The chain of consequences stretched across 60 years and an ocean. But Vance was dead now, ended by a shot at 247 meters. A shot her grandfather could never have imagined when he'd built this rifle, when he'd taught her the mathematics of death. She lay back on her cot, closed her eyes. Sleep came in fragments broken by images. Vance in the courtyard. The Barrett's recoil. The impossible arc of the bullet. The impact that ended a man who'd spent 20 years trying to surpass a legacy he never understood. At 13:45 hours, she gave up. Splashed water on her face. Headed to the briefing room. The team was already assembled. Morrison stood at the front face carved from granite. Mackenzie sat in the front row, cleared now, but still carrying the weight of accusation. The rest of the SEALs scattered throughout the room, their usual camaraderie strained by suspicion and exhaustion. And standing against the back wall, in crisp ACUs despite the heat, Colonel Augustus Stanton. Emma studied him as she entered. 61 years old, silver-haired ramrod posture. His chest bore rows of ribbons, bronze stars, Purple Hearts, campaign medals from Grenada to Iraq, 4 decades of service of sacrifice of leadership, or 4 decades of building the perfect cover. Gentlemen, Petty Officer Caldwell. Morrison's voice cut through the murmuring. Operation Phantom Thunder is officially closed. Primary target, Khalid Durrani, is KIA confirmed by drone surveillance and ground recovery. Secondary target, Marcus Vance, is also KIA. Confirmed kill at range of 3,247 meters. The room went absolutely silent, then erupted. 3,200? That's over 2 miles. How is that even possible? Morrison raised a hand. Silence crashed down. Petty Officer Caldwell made the shot with a Barrett M82A1, accounting for extreme wind conditions, heat mirage, and terrain. The kill is confirmed verified and will be submitted for record certification. He looked directly at Emma. Longest confirmed combat kill in United States military history. Previous record was 30,089 meters. Caldwell exceeded it by 158 meters. Every eye turned to her. Emma kept her face neutral, but she could feel the weight of it. Not pride, not satisfaction, just the knowledge that mathematics and training and her grandfather's legacy had converged in a single moment of perfect execution. Now, Morrison continued. About the compromised operation, he pulled up the image of the sat phone found on Mackenzie. This device was used to transmit our insertion coordinates to enemy forces. Someone planted it. Someone betrayed this operation. CID is investigating, and every person associated with this mission is under scrutiny until we find answers. Colonel Stanton stepped forward. Commander Morrison, if I may. Morrison gestured for him to continue. This is a serious breach, but we must handle it carefully. Whoever did this is watching, gauging our response. We need to be methodical, thorough, and above all patient. Rushing to judgment will only... With respect, Colonel, Emma said, her voice cutting across the room. Everyone turned. Being patient is how we got 15 Americans killed by Vance. Being methodical is how the mole operated for 6 months. Maybe what we need is decisive action. Stanton's eyes found her, measured her. Petty Officer Caldwell, the sniper, that was extraordinary work today. Just doing my job, sir. A job you did exceptionally well. 3,247 meters. That's beyond exceptional. That's historic. Stanton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Tell me, how did you calculate for the extreme range? Most snipers would have considered it impossible. The question seemed innocent, but Emma felt the probe in it, the way he was testing her, evaluating her as a threat or an asset. The Barrett has sufficient muzzle velocity to reach that distance. The 50 BMG round maintains enough energy even at extreme range. I calculated for bullet drop 56.8 MOA wind drift at 14.2 MOA Coriolis effect, and the fact that the round would be subsonic at impact, which affects terminal ballistics. The math was complex, but achievable. And you had time to make all those calculations while Vance was moving? I had 3 seconds, sir, which is all I needed. Stanton nodded slowly. Your grandfather would be proud. Robert Caldwell was a legend. Korea 1952. His methods are still taught today. He paused. In fact, I believe Marcus Vance studied those methods extensively, tried to surpass them. Must have been personal, taking him down. Emma held his gaze. It wasn't personal, sir. It was operational. Vance was a threat. I neutralized that threat. The fact that he studied my grandfather's work is irrelevant to the mission requirements. Of course. Stanton turned back to Morrison. Commander, continue your investigation. You have my full support and cooperation. I'll make myself available to CID whenever required. He moved toward the door, paused, and Commander, be very careful who you trust. Betrayal often comes from unexpected directions. After he left, the tension in the room was palpable. Morrison continued the briefing, walking through timeline, asking each team member to account for their movements during pre-mission prep. Emma listened, but her mind was elsewhere. Stanton had been probing, testing to see if she knew something. The way he'd asked about her calculations about the personal nature of the shot about her grandfather. He was looking for tells for any indication that she suspected him. The debriefing broke up at 16:30 hours. Emma was heading back to her quarters when footsteps approached from behind. Petty Officer Caldwell? She turned. Major Reeves, thin and angular intelligence officer's eyes missing nothing. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Emma fell into step as he led her away from the main buildings toward the perimeter fence, where guard towers overlooked the valley. That was an impressive performance, Reeves said, standing up to a full colonel. Not many junior enlisted have that kind of spine. I answered his questions honestly, sir. You did more than that. You challenged him, pushed back. Reeves stopped at the fence, looking out over the mountains. Tell me something. What did you think when Stanton was asking about your grandfather? Emma considered her answer carefully. I thought he knew, but more than he should. And I wondered why he was so interested in whether the shot was personal. Smart. Reeves turned to face her. Here's what I'm going to tell you, and this conversation never happened. Understand? Yes, sir. Augustus Stanton has been at this base for 6 months. In that time, 11 operations have been compromised, targets that vanished before we hit them, ambushes that shouldn't have been possible, 15 American casualties that could have been prevented. Reeves' voice was clinical flat. Every single compromised operation had one thing in common. Stanton had access to the planning. Emma's pulse quickened. You think he's the mole? I know he's the mole. But I can't prove it, not yet. CID is working the financial angle tracing accounts following money trails, but that takes time. He met her eyes. How much did Morrison tell you about Vance's phone? Everything, sir? Then you know Vance fingered Stanton. That gives us probable cause, but we need more. We need evidence that will hold up in a court-martial, which means we need to be very, very careful about how we proceed. Reeves glanced back toward the buildings. Stanton is a survivor, 4 decades in special operations. If he even suspects we're closing in, he'll run, or he'll destroy evidence, or he'll eliminate threats, Emma finished. Exactly. When is CID moving? 0200 hours. Quiet arrest, minimum personnel. By morning, it should be over. Reeves pulled out a small device, looked like a pen. But if something goes wrong, if Stanton makes a move before, then I need you to have this. Recording device. If he approaches you, if he tries to silence you or recruit you or anything else, you wear this. Get him talking. Get evidence. Emma took the device. Sir, you're asking me to investigate a superior officer without authorization. I'm asking you to protect yourself and gather evidence if an opportunity presents itself. There's a difference. Reeves started walking back. Get some rest, Caldwell. Tonight might get interesting. Emma returned to her quarters, the recording device in her pocket. She clipped it to her shirt collar, hidden under the fabric, just in case. The hours crawled. She lay on her cot, watching the ceiling running through scenarios. If Stanton ran, where would he go? If he fought, how would he do it? If he knew they were coming, what would his response be? At 0200 hours, someone pounded on her door, urgent, aggressive. Emma was up instantly, weapon in hand. Identify. Mackenzie. Emma, we've got a situation. Stanton knows. She opened the door. Mackenzie looked like death. Behind him, Morrison, fully armed, tactical vest on weapon, at low ready. CID went to arrest Stanton at Era 145, Morrison said. His quarters are empty. Personal effects gone. He ran. How did he know? We think he has someone inside CID, or he's been monitoring communications. Doesn't matter now. Morrison checked his watch. But he hasn't left the base. All exits are locked down, guards doubled. He's trapped here somewhere. Where would he go? Emma asked. Armory, Mackenzie said. He'd need weapons, ammunition, supplies for an escape. We've got teams searching, but an explosion rocked the base. Not close, but big. The building shook. Fire alarms started wailing. Morrison's radio crackled. All stations, this is TOC. Major fire at fuel depot. Possible sabotage. Emergency crews responding. All personnel report to. Morrison cut the radio. Diversion. He's moving while everyone's distracted by the fire. Classic misdirection. Where? Emma was already moving, grabbing her vest, her weapon. Motor pool, Morrison said. He needs a vehicle to ram the gates. A Humvee, with enough mass and armor, could punch through if he's desperate enough. They ran through chaos, soldiers streaming toward the fire, smoke billowing into the night sky. Commands being shouted, confusion everywhere. Nobody looked twice at three operators moving in the opposite direction. The motor pool was a large open area with rows of vehicles parked in neat lines. Most were dark and active, locked down for the night. But at the far end, past the maintenance bay's lights, engine noise, a Humvee backing out of its space headlights, cutting through the smoke-hazed darkness. There, Mackenzie pointed. The Humvee accelerated toward them, engine roaring. Emma could see the driver's Stanton face illuminated by dashboard lights, jaw set with determination. He wasn't stopping, wasn't slowing. This was a man who'd made his choice and committed to it fully. Morrison raised his M4. Get clear, but Emma was already moving, not away toward, running at an angle, calculating speed and trajectory with the same precision she used for ballistics. The Humvee was massive, armored, unstoppable, but it had blind spots. She timed her approach perfectly. As the Humvee roared past, she grabbed the door handle, yanked, locked. Her momentum carried her onto the running board, and she smashed the driver's window with her rifle stock. Safety glass exploded inward. Stanton swerved hard, trying to throw her off. Emma wrapped her arm through the window frame, locked her grip. Wind tore at her, the pavement blurred beneath her feet, but she held on. Stop the vehicle. Instead, he accelerated. The main gate was ahead, barriers visible in the distance, guards scrambling to respond. He was going to ram it, blast through, disappear into the Afghan night. Stanton pulled a sidearm from his vest, tried to point it at her through the broken window. Emma grabbed his wrist, torqued it hard. The gun discharged, deafening in the confined space bullet punching through the roof. In that moment of distraction, she hooked her arm around his neck, pulled him away from the steering wheel. The Humvee swerved violently, hit a concrete Jersey barrier at 40 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic. The vehicle flipped, rolled, came to rest on its side in a screaming of tortured metal and shattered glass. Emma had jumped clear at the last second, hit the ground rolling, came up in a combat crouch with her weapon raised. Her shoulder screamed where she'd landed on it, but nothing felt broken. Morrison and Mackenzie reached her seconds later. You okay? Fine. Get Stanton. They pulled the colonel from the wreckage. He was alive, injured, bleeding from a head wound, left arm bent at a wrong angle, but conscious. Morrison zip-tied his hands behind his back while Mackenzie cleared the vehicle for any other threats. Augustus Stanton, Morrison said, his voice formal, cold. You're under arrest for treason, espionage, conspiracy, and the murder of American service members. Stanton looked at Emma, through blood streaming down his face. You couldn't leave it alone. Vance told you, didn't he? The message. He did. I should have killed you in the valley. One call, one small adjustment to Vance's position. He could have taken you out before you ever fired. Stanton laughed, a wet, bubbling sound. But I thought maybe you'd miss. Everyone said 3,200 meters was impossible. If you missed, if Vance survived, none of this would have mattered. I'd still be clean. But I didn't miss, Emma said quietly. I made the shot at 3,247 meters. And then I made another one. And I'll keep making them, Colonel, for as long as people like you betray people like us. Stanton spat blood. Your grandfather would have understood. Sometimes survival requires compromise. Sometimes you have to make deals to stay alive. My grandfather understood that some compromises cost you your soul. You lost yours for $8 million. He never would have understood that. He never would have forgiven it. Your grandfather was a fool. He let an enemy go in Korea. That enemy's son trained the man who killed 15 Americans. His mercy created Vance. His mercy created a legacy of honor that you corrupted. Vance at least understood that at the end. You never will. Military police arrived, took Stanton into custody. Medics checked Emma's shoulder, bruised but functional. Morrison stood with her as they watched Stanton being loaded into an ambulance, hands still bound, career and freedom and honor, all gone in one desperate gamble. You could have been killed jumping on that Humvee, Morrison said, but I wasn't, and now he's not getting away. Morrison studied her face in the pre-dawn darkness. You're not done yet, are you? This war, this fight. No, sir. I'm just getting started. 2 weeks later, the ceremony was small and classified. Just the team, a handful of officers cleared for the operation, and a 2-star general Emma had never met. The Afghan sun beat down on the formation assembled in a cleared area of FOB Wolverine. Petty Officer First Class Emma Thorne Caldwell, the general read from official orders, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against enemy forces, for tactical excellence under extreme conditions resulting in the elimination of 2 high-value targets, for actions directly leading to the capture of a traitor within our ranks preventing further loss of American lives. You are hereby awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Valor Device. Morrison pinned it on her chest. Emma stood at attention, feeling the weight of it, not the medal itself, but everything it represented. 15 Americans avenged. A traitor stopped. A legacy honored. Afterward, Morrison pulled her aside away from the others. You've got orders. Scout Sniper School Quantico. Instructor position. They want you teaching the next generation. He smiled slightly. Youngest instructor they've ever had. Your grandfather would be proud. He'd say I still have a lot to learn. We all do. But that shot 247 meters combat conditions extreme range. That's going in the history books, Caldwell. Longest confirmed kill in U.S. military history. You beat Vance's record. You beat everyone's record. Emma thought about that. About Vance's message. About her grandfather's journal. About legacy and choice and the shots that defined you. Sir, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think I made the right choice? Taking that second shot at Vance? I could have just let him run after I destroyed his rifle. Let him disappear. Into Pakistan. Become someone else's problem. But I took the kill shot. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, watching helicopters lift off in the distance. Your grandfather spared someone in Korea. That act of mercy created the lineage that eventually trained Vance, who then killed 15 Americans. Sometimes, mercy has consequences we can't predict. Sometimes, it echoes across decades. So I was right to kill him. You were right to make the choice based on judgment, not emotion. Vance chose his path, betrayal profit, over honor training the enemy. You chose to end that threat. The difference is your choice protected people. His endangered them. Morrison met her eyes. Don't second guess yourself, Caldwell. You did what needed doing. Your grandfather would understand that. 3 months later, Emma stood in front of 24 students on their first day of Scout Sniper School. The classroom at Quantico was sterile institutional, nothing like the mountains of Afghanistan, but the weight of expectation was the same. Young faces looked back at her, mostly men with 3 women scattered among them, all of them looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She was 27 years old. Some of these students were older. I'm Petty Officer Caldwell. My record shot is 3 to 247 meters. Made it in Afghanistan, September 2011. Longest confirmed combat kill in United States military history. The room was silent, impressed. Some disbelief still lingering. That's not why you should listen to me. Emma pulled out the leather journal, worn soft, from a lifetime of handling. My grandfather's record was 286 meters. Made it in Korea, November 1952. But his most important shot, she held up the journal, was the one he didn't take. The one where he chose mercy over mission. She walked along the front row, making eye contact with each student. Shooting is physics. Wind speed, air density, bullet drop, Coriolis effect, spin drift. I can teach you all of that. Over the next 12 weeks, you'll learn to calculate everything down to the millimeter. You'll learn to compensate for factors most people never think about. You'll become experts in the mathematics of death. She opened the journal to her grandfather's entry. Read it aloud. The hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's knowing when not to take it. One student, young Marine, barely 20, raised his hand. "Ma'am, with respect, you took the shot, multiple shots. How does that quote apply?" "Because I made the choice based on judgment, not reflex. Every time I pulled a trigger, I had calculated not just the ballistics, but the consequences. Would this shot save American lives? Would not taking it endanger them? Was this the right target, the right moment, the right choice?" Emma closed the journal, set it on the podium in front of her. "My grandfather chose mercy when mercy was appropriate. A scared 19-year-old who made a choice to run instead of fight. I chose justice when justice was necessary. A traitor who had killed 15 Americans and would have killed more. Both decisions required the same skill judgment." She looked at each face in turn. "Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you to shoot further than you think possible. I'm going to teach you to calculate variables most people can't even name. I'm going to make you into weapons, precise, lethal, unstoppable." She paused. "But more than that, I'm going to teach you to think, to judge, to understand that being a sniper isn't about distance or body count or breaking records. It's about making the right choice when lives depend on it. Because any fool can pull a trigger. It takes wisdom to know when that trigger pull matters." After class, she stood alone on the range. The late afternoon sun painted Virginia in shades of amber. She set up a target at 2,000 meters, not the longest shot, but a respectable distance, a distance her grandfather would have appreciated. The Remington 700 felt right in her hands, his rifle now hers, passed down through blood and training and the understanding that some legacies were worth carrying. She chambered around. Wind was calm 5 miles per hour from 3 o'clock. Temperature 72 degrees. Humidity moderate. Altitude negligible compared to Afghanistan. All the variables lined up perfectly. She settled into position. Breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. The scope's crosshairs found the target with practiced ease. And in that moment, before the shot, in the stillness that every sniper knows, she heard her grandfather's voice. Not memory, not imagination. Something deeper. "You understand now, Emma. It's not about the distance. It's never been about the distance. It's about making the right choice when it matters most. That's the legacy. That's what I tried to teach you all those summers on the ranch." Emma smiled. "I understand, Grandpa. Finally." She squeezed the trigger. The Remington spoke its truth. 3 seconds of flight. The bullet carved its path through Virginia air, following the mathematics that never lied, obeying the physics that didn't care about legacy or honor or the weight of choice. The target rang, dead center. Emma stood, slung the rifle across her back. Behind her, she could hear the next class forming up voices, calling out equipment being distributed, the sounds of people preparing to learn something that would change them forever. 24 students who would learn to calculate bullet drop and wind drift and Coriolis effect, who would learn to shoot further than they'd ever dreamed, who would become the next generation of American snipers. But more importantly, who would learn judgment, who would understand that the rifle was just metal and wood, that the shot was just physics. But the choice was everything. Emma walked toward the classroom, toward her students, toward the future she would help shape. The war would continue. There would always be another threat, another Vance, another Stanton. But there would also be people like Emma, like her grandfather. People who understood that being a sniper wasn't just about the distance you could reach. It was about the wisdom to know when to reach it. And that was a lesson worth passing on. Behind her, the sun set over Quantico. The rifle range fell silent. Tomorrow she would teach. Tomorrow, a new generation would begin to understand. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of peace. One moment to feel the weight of the bronze star on her chest, the memory of her grandfather's journal in her pack, the knowledge that she had honored his legacy, not by surpassing his distance, but by understanding his wisdom. The hardest shot isn't the longest one. She knew that now. She would make sure they all knew it too.